Hey, 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 this is Seagrove. Welcome to the World Championship Meta Forecast. I'm here with three lovely gentlemen. I'll let you all introduce yourselves and we'll get started. And why don't you start?
My name's Emery Taylor. I'm a player from Minnesota. You might know me for a little card called Let Loose, and I'm happy to be here today.
Rahul.
Hey guys, I'm Rahul. Yeah, that's all I got. I'm a top 16.
Yep, and Pedro.
I'm Pedro Torres from Spain. I play from my team is Limitless, and I got top four at Worlds last year. Will try my best this year, but it's gonna be hard. But I will try again.
Sure. Awesome. All right, so obviously we got the World Championship coming up. We have a big rotation. We lose Zoroark, which is pretty significant. And then we still have big decks like Pikachu and Charizard. And why don't you start us off with the state of Pikachu?
It's still really good. I think the main thing it loses is Choice Band, and as cliche as it sounds, Let Loose. A lot of the deck's strength going into NAIC was basically just going Let Loose, Coco, and threatening a turn 2 full blitz, and putting your opponent at 4, and basically saying like, okay, you have to find Mew, you have to set up your board, and you have to somehow find a way to respond to like 2 tag teams. And losing both of those really hurt Choice Band, especially because like, you know, Pokemon are only getting more HP, and hitting these 260, 270 HP Pokemon is pretty hard. It's still really good, if not a little weak to damage modifiers and stuff like that. Obviously not having as much hand disruption is good, but there's a lot of different ways to play the deck, whether you count with Jirachi or without Jirachi. I personally think with Jirachi is better. I think just having an out to reset stamp is more important than the quote-unquote turbo version, but I would say I got turn 1 full blitz pretty consistently. Or not pretty consistently, but you know, enough for it to be a genuine threat with the Jirachi version. I think Jirachi version lets you build your hand and go for these giant swing turns that Pikachu is so well known for. I think it can match up really well against the Greens decks. I think it can match up really well against certain one prize decks, but where it really struggles is with sort of like one prizers and anything that can sort of stop Pikachu from hitting it.
Okay. Are there any big fighting Pokemon that are like worrisome for Pikachu?
I mean, Buzzwole's the big one, right? Baby Buzzwole is still legal.
We lose GX, right? Buzzwole GX.
We do lose the GX, to my understanding. Beyond that, I guess there's still no Silvally rotated. No, it got reprinted in Ultra Prism. So technically, Silvally's still legal with like fighting memory, but I don't think that's very good.
Gustavo Wada disagrees.
But beyond that, I don't know. I'm probably forgetting something. I think Aerodactyl GX is one that's coming out that people really like, or some people really like. I don't think it's very good. But no, there aren't a lot of fighting types right now. Baby Buzzwole is definitely the hardest one to deal with.
Rahul or Pedro, anything to add on Pikachu?
I think Pikachu keeps a lot of its engine, which is why it's so strong. I know it's going to sound controversial, but I don't think Pikachu actually has any good matchups amongst the top decks. But I think because it is the most consistent of the top decks, it is always considered a threat. Because Pikachu's biggest strength as a deck is its mobility and energy acceleration. And a lot of other decks don't have the same mobility that Pikachu does. So once most decks use their gust effects, like the custom catchers, Pikachu can kind of play as free as they want, which is why Pikachu is still a tier 1 and top 3 deck. But it still doesn't have good matchups across the board. Like if every other deck sets up optimally in like the same 2 as Pikachu does, they will beat Pikachu. But the thing is that every other deck does not set up as consistently as Pikachu does.
Okay. Pedro, anything additional there?
Pika is probably the best deck, if not the best. Like free retreat, one Hekio. Tag Ball is probably the best GX in the game in the tag team. I guess we expect that really big tag team meta in Wars, because with no Nest Ball, like baby things are really inconsistent. So you can set up a tag ball for 5 prices, like really easy. and you have the options to have a tag team attacker, 2 price attackers, and
Right.
Zapdos as the 1 price. So you can be super flexible with Zeraora. So definitely you need to prepare against Pika. And I guess everyone is gonna join Mew in their lists because Pika will be so popular. And in mirrors, you can even play the expert belt matchup because you play Borners, so you can surprise your opponent too with a 1 KO with the revenge, I guess, the attack or something like that.
Okay. So interesting. So what you said, a Machamp?
Oh yeah.
Is that you mean the Machamp GX, Machamp Marshadow? Okay.
Yeah, there is a tool, right? That you attacks for 1 less fighting.
Okay. Okay. That's okay. I like that. That's good. So Rahul, what do you think about Charizard right now?
It is my favorite deck heading into Worlds. I think Reshiram is just it's always been a really strong deck. Greens has, I mean, and I think that not having the turn 1 disruption with like Let Loose and stuff makes the deck a lot stronger. The only issue the deck now faces is the fact, or like one of the only issues it has is that getting your Volcanion out early is a kind of a problem because you don't have a reliable way to search it unless you play Pokemon Communication. I think that's just bad. Um, and then you can pretty much just like do what you want with the deck and play like all these weird tech cards, which is why I like the deck. And I think stadiums are really powerful right now in the current metagame. I think Stadium Wars and like having the right stadiums has been very impactful to me. And so Reshizard is a deck that can play like 4, maybe even 5 different stadium cards, and just get which one suits the situation. Again, the problem that everyone has brought up, and I do agree, is a slight problem, is that Reset Stamp, once you're down to 3, 2, or 1, can be crippling at times because you can't Greens and Welder in the same turn, which is the only real problem. So I think with Reshi, you have to play a little bit more patiently in this meta, and but it does have a favorable matchup against a majority of the top decks, which makes it really good. But Blacephalon is like a really bad matchup.
Okay.
And Pika, I think, is like it's like slightly favored depending on whether or not you play Shrine or not.
M or Pedro, anything to add on Charizard? Reshizard?
Pedro, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I was testing the Reggie Green. Seems really good too because it's like super strong, like Pikachu, like tag team again. So you have the Cherish Balls, you have the 1 KO possibility, but Reggie, you have healing cards like potions and stuff. So you have really good matchups against non-tag teams too. And I was struggling to against Blaze too with Reggie Green. So we were thinking about Tapu Fini as a tech that solve the problems maybe. And it's like you swing the matchup completely. And it's only maybe 1 slot. So
Wow.
definitely Reggie and Pika are really, really good right now because the support of tag teams are insane. And the support of lightning and fire are insane.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. I can't believe like Fiery Flint and Crystal and Welder. Like Welder is 2 supporters. It's a How and a Blacksmith combined into 1. Like that is not fair.
Tierno.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, so it's nuts.
Yeah, in terms of having things to add, I would just say that like I think the deck. I said this on another podcast, and I think Ability Reshizard was definitely the worst deck I played. Like on. It was the worst deck I've tried so far. Like it just, like relying on Welder was really clunky. I would whiff energy all the time. I would, like every time I seemed to get set up, like I was playing a game with Justin Kulos, and literally I go turn 1 Welder, attach Reshi. I'm sitting there with like Ninetales, in my hand. I'm all ready to go. I have Furnace. He literally drops 4 Electro Power on me and full blitzes me for a knockout. And I was like, well,
GG.
So obviously that's not going to happen every time. But I think Ability Reshi, it's worth saying that's really bad. Rahul, you said if you choose to play Shrine, I think the deck kind of needs Shrine or like Focus Trap or some damage. I think if you choose not to play it, you're kind of just going to pick up your cards a lot versus Pika or Mirrors.
The reason I say if, and I'm just going to caveat that, sorry to interrupt you, is that I think it's a staple. I think Shrine is an absolute staple on the list. but I have seen a couple of articles and a couple of videos by notable players like Azul putting out lists that don't have Shrine, and I'm
Okay.
just looking at it thinking, am I stupid or do people just not understand that Shrine is a staple card in this deck?
Right. Yeah. Before Madison, I did a meta forecast with Seagrove again, and I said Reshiram Greens was super good because you can just go greens for choice band Shrine and knock out other Reshis. And I think that's the same idea. I think it also makes your GX attack a lot better
Oh yeah.
because hitting 200 is obviously such a low number relatively, but hitting 230 or something like that. So I will say I think Shrine is needed. I think the deck is really strong, but like Rahul said, like having no way to search out Volcanion and having like what 3 of your 7 Pokemon or something like that being bad starters. I was testing the matchup earlier today, and my opponent started Reshi 3 of the 5 games we played, which I don't know, statistically that's probably unlikely, but he lost all the ones he started Reshi with. So between the combination of Stamp and having difficulty finding Reshi, I'm just not, I don't know, I'm not as infatuated with the deck as other players are.
So since we lose choice band, are you playing Koga's Trap?
No.
No, Shrine is better, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you can greens for Shrine. It's like the same issue with greens and Welder, where it's like you can't play it in the same turn unless you Surge, and like Surge is a bad, unreliable card.
If you're already playing Surge and have like a whole combo-oriented deck planned out, sure, but I don't see a reason to play it when Reset Stamp exists in the format.
I agree.
So you need you're talking about for the Pikarom matchup then, the Shrine.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
In particular, the one of Shrine makes the Pikarom matchup incredibly favored, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of like Twitter arguments and stuff going on right now about like if Pikarom like why, and I'm personally confused because in my testing, Green's Reshi comes out very favored if the Shrine's like you don't even need the Shrine to stick. I just need to put down the Shrine, and it doesn't have to be this turn. It doesn't have to be next turn. At some point in the time, that 10 damage on that Pikarom will lead me to a KO with Flare Starter.
Right. It's also really worth mentioning that if you can keep Shrine in play for one of your opponent's turns, it puts a Raichu from 260 to 230, which is a one-shot for Flare Strike, and that's like a really big deal because any competent Pika player should be playing Choo-Choo and should be trying to set up Lightning Ride GX for 280.
Yep.
Okay. Very cool. Pedro, we lose Zoroark, the best card ever, I think. So, what does that free up? Does that make any deck that was not viable now?
Zoroark is really sad.
It is.
So I guess now I'm really happy with the tag teams, but it's really hard to find something like Zoroark that is super consistent, and you simply put like double Zoroark on 2 really easy. But now it's like, I don't know. I really miss my boy.
Yeah, the good boy. So at one point Malamar really struggled against Parallel City, Zoroark, and now we lost Parallel City. Malamar hasn't had as much trouble against it, but that sort of freed Malamar for this whole year. Is there a deck that is freed like in that way because Zoroark is gone?
Malamar is Malamar. So like I'm having a lot of problems trying to Giratina turn 2. Mm-hmm. That's a simple goal, but you struggle a lot without Nespot right now. That's in my test. And I put like 4 Lily, 4 Cynthia, 4 Erika, but it is not. Sometimes you draw like Energies, Viridians, and you put 1 in K, and that's all. And it's super sad because Nespot is a big loss for the deck. But if Malamar setup, in my opinion, is the best deck in theory.
Yeah.
But this doesn't happen in the practice consistently in my test. So.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Thoughts, Em?
No, I mean everything that was sort of held back by Zoroark, I would say almost by the end of last year, I don't think anything was super held back by Zoroark. The closest thing you might say is Zapdos, but we even saw that get a top 8 at NAIC. Again, obviously Alolan, and the things that were held back by Zoroark in itself is not an impressive card. Mm-hmm. In itself, it's due to DCE, it's due to Alolan Muck, it's due to being a stage 1. It's, obviously. So I think the ability trade is very good, obviously. We all know that. But, like, losing Alolan Muck is probably a bigger deal to certain decks than Zoroark is. Because by the end of the year, it wasn't even really a Zoroark deck, I feel like. I feel like it was more of like a, sort of a Dugong, Persian, Zoroark. Zoroark was more of the engine than the attacker, I would say. I mean, obviously, like, it was an amazing attacker, fantastic attacker. But it's just...
Gotta be careful what you say about Zoroark.
Yeah, everything else rotating is probably more important than Zoroark.
Oh. Rahul,
I will say...
Oh, go ahead.
I would say I think Dark Box is the strongest deck if it sets up over Malamar. And if you're lucky enough, I don't think Malamar is the strongest deck if it gets. But if Dark Box,
if you dark return to with Weavile and Double Naganadel, sure.
Right.
It's like the new Nacquack, right?
That's the most.
I completely agree with you. But as long as we're talking optimal, perfect situations, I think that's the best.
Yeah, sure.
So
I agree.
Rahul, what do you think about that, or what about Dark Box?
I guess, I mean, I don't have anything to add to the Zoroark conversation, so I'll just go straight to the Dark Box. So I was one of the players who, about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, Michael Catron came to one of my testing sessions and pretty much just smacked the living daylights out of everyone with this Dark Box list. And I was like, what? This deck is insane. Like, all these attackers are really good. Like, you set up, blah, blah, blah. And so, and I was like, can I get your list? And he's like, yeah. And then I came home. I built it. Like, I think we played like 10 or 11 games with his deck, and like it didn't lose a game. It was like turn 2 Darkrai GX for 6 energy, double nag every game, and I'm just like, whoa, this is so like if this does this every game, how do you ever lose? Like, this is crazy. So I built it myself, and I'm playing test hands, and I'm just like, I'm getting one like point pull down, and that's it. And I'm just like, where are my Sneasels?
Broken deck.
What is happening? And then like I started playing some Skype games with people, and I was like, this deck sucks. Holy Christ, it sucks. Like, oh my, like it's just a worse Nagquag that you need to high roll.
Right.
Like, if you don't high roll, you
high
actually cannot win games.
Yeah.
Like, you're set up like if every other tech sets up medium, like just the average, Dark Box will lose every game. Dark Box needs to have like the top like 20% of their setup every game to even stand a chance against the top decks, in my opinion. But Dark Box does have like some of the most insane attackers in the deck. Like, they have some like both the GXs are super, super, super scary. But the problem is keeping energy on the board and actually setting it properly.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I agree.
Pedro, any thoughts on Dark Box to add?
In Worlds, you should face good players, and if you face a smart player and they opponent KO your Weavile, then you lose, right? And if you want to set up 2 Weaviles, then you don't have space for all the other stuff. So, I don't know. It's really good, but you need at least 3 Weavile to compete against good players, I guess, in your list. And have a Sneasel in bench plus the Weavile. Because you need to expect the double custom catcher every turn, right?
So we have this tag team meta, right?
Yep.
And we lose Max Potion and Acerola. Is there any place for single prize attackers that can 2-shot these tag teams, like hit 150 and do that? M says no.
I mean, I'm probably going to steal what M's going to say here, but I think no, just because like the setup is so difficult to do. And I think almost every single one of the tag team decks, if you have space for it, and I think you should have space for it, should be playing Super Scoop Up.
Yeah.
Because, dude.
Reshiram?
No, not Reshiram. I mean, like,
you want a high roll?
Yeah, I mean, it's Worlds.
Let's go.
I mean, flip cards historically give you that, like, because I don't think the difference in day 2 is going to be player skill. I think it's going to be a lot about your deck. And like, if you're already playing a high roll deck like Pikachu, I think playing Scoop Ups is fine.
Oh my god.
I wouldn't. Okay, that's.
M's like, you didn't steal what I was gonna say.
Big disclaimer. I would say this: we're in a really bad situation, where, like Pedro said, Malamar is a very good deck, and the issue with Malamar, it is the ultimate gatekeeper for one prize attackers. Basically, no other one prize attacker can do to Giratina what Giratina can do to other one prize decks.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, any one prize deck you're playing, you're automatically taking a bad matchup to one of the big three. And that's assuming that your Reshiram opponent starts Reshiram, doesn't hit double mixed herbs, doesn't force your opponent to four-shot whatever you're trying to attack them with. And like every one prize deck I can think of is relatively luck-based. So that includes Malamar drawing into multiple NKs in Malamar's turn 1 or 2. That includes Chandelure, which I think is actually a decent pick. But like, again, you have to discard Pokemon, and that's luck-based. It depends on, and so I one prizer decks just can't compete with Malamar. And as we've done more and more testing, like Rahul has noticed, like we have a lot of great potions, we have a lot of mixed herbs, and these decks that can play greens can just outplay one prize decks because they're so one note and they're so inconsistent, for lack of a better term. I mean, we have no Surge cards, we have no Nest Ball, no Ultra Ball. Pokemon Communication is an inherently flawed card. Especially in a format like this. So one prizer decks aren't really worth your time because honestly you're just playing a deck which doesn't have support in the hopes that maybe it'll hit weakness on a better deck.
Mm-hmm. When you say big three, are you referring to Reshiram, Pikachu, and Malamar?
Yeah, I don't think anyone would say those aren't the 3 best decks in the format.
Yeah, agreed.
Somebody's going to come with a spice. You better be ready.
I mean, someone is, but it doesn't matter because they're not going to leak it beforehand.
Big three is play.
I think the big three is a misnomer. When you say big 3 best decks, it's going to be the big 3 is just the most expected deck. Right. So say there might be a deck that is better than that in the big 3, and a spicier deck like maybe Limitless has something saucy after their boot camp. But the big 3 is just the 3 decks that you need to be able to counter going in because it's not what the best 3 are, but it's what the biggest 3 will be.
And that's especially for day 1, right? Like
correct.
Day 2 could change.
Day 2 is a jungle. Day 2, everyone just plays what they want. Like it's the harsh reality, and your day is determined by Tom. Yeah. Like Pedro over here played Ray with puzzles. Nobody expected Ray with puzzles, dude.
That's awesome. Emma's our day 1 ambassador here. So I'm our day 0 ambassador.
I would agree exactly with what Rahul said. I think those 3 decks are what you should be. It is true, though, having played, this will be my 4th Worlds, you shouldn't completely base your testing off of the big 3 because at Worlds, like Rahul said, a lot of people tend to just play what they think is best. Well, obviously, people do that for most tournaments, but like people don't adhere as much to meta decks at Worlds because everyone is so expecting these 3 decks. And so people will be playing Malamar, people will be playing Pikachu, people will be playing greens, but everyone's going to have a twist, everyone's going to have their own variety because we really don't have any nailed out lists yet. You know, like Rahul and Xander and all of them did such an amazing job basically creating Pikachu before NAIC that like I knew going into the event I already had 50 of my cards or 56 of my cards determined going into the event just because I knew the consistency engine had been hammered out. But there are going to be players who haven't done any testing and don't have a very good consistency engine and are just going to get bodied with one of these big 3 decks. And there are going to be people who have really worked on a certain deck and have certain techs and understand how the format works on a fundamental basis.
What's the best deck we haven't hit on yet? Pedro, you start.
I'm not sure. I wanted to add it from the topic before that I guess my opinion from day 1, especially more than the 2, is like you need to be prepared and ready to know how to play against Malamar, Pika, and Rechi greens, like having a really good game plan against them because you want to play fast in day 1 because you want to lose or win. You don't want to tie, right? So at least you should have like the idea of how to approach the matchups, and I guess at least you need to feel that you can at least 50-50 the matchup. If you have one of these of 3 is a really bad matchup, I guess your deck should work to try at least the 50-50 and having all the game plans in head, right, to play fast. Because day 1, for example, 3 years ago when I played day 1, I couldn't make it 2 because I was new player and I knew I was winning, but I didn't play that fast. And I guess day 1, you really want to play fast to win or lose because it's the reward to make the 2 is really amazing, right? So. And and then the new question was, sorry?
Any good decks we haven't hit on yet that you want to talk about?
Blacephalon is a good deck, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess Mewtwo has a lot of potential because it was super overhyped, I guess, in the beginning, and then people start to play Power Plant in every deck, But Mewtwo has a lot of variants, right? Mewtwo can play Mina with Altaria, Mewtwo can play Welder with Rechi, Mewtwo can play Mewtwo Box, and in day one, in Mewtwo Box, there is like 30 attackers that is really good in Mewtwo, and you maybe lost for a Macargo GX surprise discard 5 cards, or you
Yeah.
maybe lose for random Cobalion GX attack so you can't attack.
Right.
So Mewtwo Box is definitely really good, and it has really good potential because if you don't expect, like for example, when you face Reggie Greens, you know more or less what are you gonna face. When you face Pika, you are gonna know more or less the 90% of the deck. But if you face Mewtwo Box, you will not know what is happening in one, and probably it's too late.
Yeah.
So when you play an amount of power plants, like in Reggie Greens or in even some Malamars can join one power plant, you it's really scary to face against, even if you are a really good player and you face a non that really good player, but he can surprise you really
Yeah.
easy because they play like 4 or 5 stadiums to counter power plant.
Right.
They can do whatever they want. So I guess it's a really good deck that people can play, and then you need to. That the surprise factor with game one is really big
Yeah.
for
You
the
just give me.
attackers. You know.
Did Charizard GX rotate?
Discard 10, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, too
I
bad.
guess
Do
yeah.
not know.
That's Burning Shadows. Yeah.
Okay. It had a promo too, right? Or was it just an alt art?
It might have been an alt art. Yeah.
Okay. Very sad.
I think I'm gonna steal the thunder and jump onto Pedro's comments here. I think the two decks he mentioned are the other two decks that are on my radar as well. I think Blacephalon GX is the best non-big 3 tier 1 deck. Whether it be with the Greens engine or whether it be with the Naga engine, the deck is just so powerful because it can trade 2 prizes for 3 in any matchup. Your Malamar matchup isn't great, but every other matchup across the board is fine. But the biggest thing that scares me about playing Blacephalon is I think day 1 to day 2, if Blacephalon does well, people will realize that playing a 1-of Tapu Fini actually just auto-wins the matchup. Like, Blacephalon cannot deal with Tapu Fini.
What does Tapu Fini do?
It's like water colorless for 100 damage, but if your opponent has an Ultra Beast on the board, you can attack for 1 colorless. I might not get the first energy cost correct, but you get the gist of it, yeah. So like I've tested, and like as we're getting closer, I've been seeing a lot of people include Tapu Fini in their list because why would you not play a 1-of card for an actual auto win, especially especially at Worlds? Like, and I think Blacephalon is a good enough deck that people realize it's good and will play Blacephalon. So I'm on the camp of either I play Blacephalon potentially, or I will try to counter it on my own end. The only deck I don't like see Fini going in is Green's Reshi because you don't want another bad starter. But every other deck is like in Pika, easy inclusion.
Would you play it in Blacephalon?
I mean, yeah, you could just play it for the mirror. Why would you not? It's literally a free prize. And then the other deck, Mew 3 box or Mew 2 box or whatever. I have personally not put too much time into it, but like Pedro said, like there's so many attackers and so many ways to build the deck. I feel like it has to be good, right?
Yeah.
Like this deck has to be good. I just haven't put any time into it because it actually just auto loses Malamar.
Yeah.
And I think Green's Reshi is very close because of Power Plant. But I think you could smack the crap out of Pika, and I think like a lot of matchups should be favored for you, but I just haven't put the time into it, so that'll be something I test a good bit this week because I think Pablo put out this article recently, and I know he's been really, really liking the deck, so I'm willing to give his list a try and see what's the hype. Like, what is this deck really as strong as it's supposed to be? And I like messaged Pablo, and he's like, if Worlds was tomorrow, I'd be playing this deck. So.
Pedro, you mentioned Tapu Fini before. Is that the same one you're talking about?
Yeah.
And I thought you mentioned it as a Reshiram counter. Or were you talking about block?
Yeah, like you're really, really scary of. You're really scary of Blacephalon. You can join Fini. Richie Green is a bad starter, but he's maybe better starter than Reshiram. But
yeah, definitely.
So if you're really scary of Blacephalon GX, like one copy is definitely good. And Fini is really good against Darkbox too because you can 100 tag team and then finish it with another stuff. Or you can, I mean, there is a lot of decks that play maybe one of Travis, like Darkbox plays Naganadel, Blacephalon plays Naganadel, and I don't know, but Baby Basgol or something like that. So
if
you can,
puts
because
down
it's
a
in
circuitry or
play,
something.
right? Ultra Beast in play, right? So
yeah.
No matter if it's in the bench, so you can 100 attack team, you give Fini, and then you finish attacking with another stuff.
And best deck that we haven't talked about.
Well, I'll talk about the other two decks.
Okay.
Blounds, I think the deck's bad. I think it sets up. Yeah, it's consistent. And beyond that, it is underwhelming. And I feel like more often than not, your opponent, it's like Pedro said, it's a one-note deck. You play against a competent player, and that player is going to outplay you. You know, as Pikachu, I think, I'm like, I played like 10 straight games against Blounds over different testing sessions, and I literally went like 8-2. I think the deck's good. Like, it's tier 2, but it's not like Reshi. Okay, so you're gonna beat Reshi. I think Pika and Finny just body it, and it's sort of a good transition into Mewbox because obviously Finny is this huge tech that basically just destroys Blacephalon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if your opponent ever puts down 2 Finny in a game or gets out 2 Finny with like Brock's crit or something like that, you're literally gonna pick up your cards as Blacephalon. I just don't see how you would ever win that. It's the same idea with Mewbox, where if Rahul is playing greens and I'm playing Mewbox, he's gonna be able to greens for power plant greens every single turn. And I'm gonna look him dead in the eyes and I'm going to pass my turn. And it's just not like you don't have any way to search your deck consistently. You're playing a Welder and or a Mina deck, neither of which are, I've already said I think Ability Rush is one of the worst decks going into Worlds, and this deck is like worse Ability Rush is because you have to discard your attackers. If the deck ever gets too popular beyond Power Plant, you got Giraffe Rig. Obviously, a competent Mewbox player should never discard the attacker before they're going to use it, but Giraffe Rig is going to throw you off. And Power Plant existing makes the deck bad. Not bad per se, because I'm sure players have played more with it than I have, but I think it's really hard to play around, especially if you're playing against a competent player. Not to mention that Lucamine is technically still in format. And so if it actually ever got to the point, you could Lucamine chain Power Plant. And so it's just not, there are so many attackers. Yeah, there's a lot of GX Pokemon, but it's kind of like, eh. Beyond that, best attacker we haven't talked about, I'm not going to leak the list, but Persian GX. Persian GX Naganadel seems like the best deck we haven't talked about. I think it's kind of powerful. I think it allows you to use Catwalk, and from what I've seen of people talking about it, seems like a very solid tier 2 deck at least, and maybe tier 1 if people can really get a list nailed down.
It's basically like a Zoroark remake, just without Zoroark.
Yeah, it's kind of bad. Like, if you compare it to Zoroark, it's bad. But yeah, it basically focuses on, like with tag team decks, it focuses on using Custom Catcher and Oranguru to set up a Stinger GX play. But again, that strategy isn't really that good because people play like a million healing cards. Beyond that, it's just sort of using different things to supplement Persian GX as an attacker.
Okay. This is not related at all to the World's Meta Forecast, but I want to ask you all something. You all have some type of math or logic in your life, like
Sure.
Economics, mathematics, chess. How does that play into? Does that help you when you're playing Pokemon? And if so, how? If you guys would take like a minute or two and talk about that.
Yeah, I want to add a little stuff only before that.
Sure.
I guess if I didn't play Shedinja in Berlin, the deck will win Wars super easy because no one will release the deck, no one will release the concept. So
Yep.
I definitely regret playing in Berlin because I will win Wars with Shedinja. But
Easily.
the hype was so big. But definitely, I guess no one will release the deck, or at least in Yang, I guess. But that's now Shedinja is probably one of the best decks. Even if it's know it, Shedinja is probably one of the best decks that we didn't talk about yet.
Okay.
Because, for example, in Pika Sec, if you want to beat it, you maybe need to play 2 Lysander Labs and Monkey, and you don't want to play these cards in Pika.
Mm-hmm. You mean Shedinja Oranguru, right?
Yeah, Oranguru Shedinja. And with no Guzman off blower, like custom catches are not enough against. And if you want to Tyranitar GX them, you can put a Latios GX in Shedinja. So definitely, even if your deck should beat Shedinja against a good player, a good star player like Alessandro in Italy, for example, it's gonna be really hard to beat them. So I guess we definitely need to. I guess Shedinja is not gonna be playable. No one is gonna play it, But if you face one and your deck is not ready, it's a big loss,
Yeah.
So with the new question, I play chess like 20 years, like since 5 years old to 23, 24 years old. When a game of chess is like, when you play like long games, could be like 6, 7 hours, and you maybe make a mistake in the last movement and you lose the entire game. So you learn a lot to be focused all the entire game. So I guess when I started to play Pokemon TCG, I never played before a trading card game. I started really late if we compare to the other players, like
Right.
Rahul, for example, or other players like Ramawa that he plays like for,
Ever.
a lot of years. But I could get to be like in the top in Europe rankings, for example, really quickly. And I guess chess helped me a lot in the part of the focus, concentration, and try to see more than the two next turns. Like, okay, if I do this play, I try to make I try to think the opponent is gonna do the best play. So if the opponent do the best play against my play, how can I respond it? So I guess chess helped me a lot with that, to try to see more than two turns in a row later. So yeah, I guess in my case that helped me a lot to be a better Pokemon TCG player in a shorter time.
Yeah, for me, I have always been pretty good at math, and economics is the degree I went through. So economics is so simple economics is time versus money, and that has always been my motto when I play, because I'm one of those players who very rarely ties. So if I see a game, I always think about the opportunity cost of what would happen if I continue to play this game out. Is there a potential chance that I win this game, despite like a long game, a scrappy game, or is it worth just scooping and going to game 3 because I already have a game 1 lead, or is it worth just going to game 2 because there's no reason to play this game out because my opponent has an ideal setup? Like, what do I need them to miss for me to stay in this game? So I scoop pretty early in my games, and that has helped me a lot in my career because I rarely tie, and sometimes the difference between a tie and a win can determine if you make top 8 or not in a long tournament, which is why I have a very high top 8 success rate. I am one of the, I think, like, not to brag or anything, but I think I'm one of the players who has the most like regionals top 8s across the board, because I know when to throw in the towel. And I think a lot of the decisions I make in a game come down to, do I have the time to wait for him to make this move? Can I wait one more turn and play it safe, or do I have to all in this turn? And a lot of the time, where economics like comes in handy for me is that it's very like mathematically just a decision of, do I have the time, like, versus do I, like, it's just time versus money. And so a lot of the time I make a lot of riskier moves that may seem risky to like the general public, but if I don't make that move and it pays off, like if I don't make that move and he already has game in hand, what am I losing in making that play? I'm really losing nothing. So that's where a lot of the time my strange lines that I take to victory can be questionable, but they're, in my mind, they feel justified.
You're so good, man.
I love you, Pedro.
Yeah, so my math background is calculus mainly, a little bit of statistics. I've taken both AP calculus classes, gotten 5s on both AP tests, not to flex or anything.
You do tutoring too, right, for math?
Yeah, I tutor calculus in my free time too. It doesn't do anything for me in Pokemon. I didn't do that well on the AP stats test. I unga and I bunga and I blow down my opponent's cards. I mean, it's just not. I can't justify it.
Yeah.
No. I just don't have the knowledge to really incorporate it. My dad always says like we should find some way to quantify Pokemon in a more specific way, and I think players like Rukan especially do a really good job. Caleb Gettimer does a really good job of quantifying Pokemon mathematically, but I don't have the knowledge for that. I don't have the time for that. I just focus on building the best list I can, and I will do like quick percentages, okay, 20 cards in the deck, double Stellar Wish, or, checking my prize cards, being like, well, I prize an E-Power this game, and I need to go for double E-Power on the second turn, so maybe I should, like, Stellar Wish before I Vulcaner to try and keep Pokemon in my hand, or, E-Power in my hand, or in my deck, but it's not, a lot of this stuff is basic sequencing. It's not really math, it's
sequencing
just like,
is math.
It's sort of more abstract than that. It's like math where it's like, well, if I need A, how can I use B to get to A, And so, like, no, I don't really use math. I'm not really like that advanced, I guess, and I don't think I would know how to use the knowledge even if I had it.
I got into an argument or a discussion with a friend about if you should Shaman or Super Rod first. If you need a card that is not an energy or Pokemon, like you need a supporter, a Guzma or a Lysander to win. Like at what point? And like I graphed, I did used a graphing calculator to figure out like how many cards left in deck do it, but never come into use. Or maybe once, but cool.
I
That's
never
awesome.
do that. You need to feel it. I never do that.
Yeah.
You feel it. You will draw it. So.
When I like, I'll tell you like a fun story with me and Pedro. Before Australia, there was a lot of games where like I was like, I like statistically I'm unfavored. Like, how do I win this matchup? Like, how do I do this? And Pedro would just go on to be like, just feel it. You got this. He's like, just do it with your heart. And I'm like, okay.
Did it work?
Yeah, for the most part.
Awesome. All right, so last question, and then we're gonna close. What is the best deck you're not playing at Worlds? Like 100%, I am not playing this deck.
I can list like 3.
All right, go for it.
I'm not going to play Blounds. It's too one note, and I do not like it.
You're gonna play Pikachu. We know this.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't like Blounds inherently. I can say with like 90% confidence that I'm not going to play a green stack. Just reset stamp. I've watched so many games and testing where it's like stamp, and you're like, and to me, any deck that's kind of like that. I mean, I played Reshiram greens in Madison, and I know just how scary like Let Loose and Hang Disruption can be. And I don't know. I can't put myself through that. I'm gonna have like a heart attack at 17.
Yeah.
So I just, I don't know. I would say I'm more or less, for the time being, gonna be avoiding greens and blondes especially.
Okay. I guess I was wrong about Stamp. I didn't think it was gonna be that good. Rahul, best deck you will not play.
I think because Pedro and I are day 2, it's a little bit of a different question for us because I think you can't really eliminate any deck off the table because we get a whole day to kind of just like look at what's going on and we can bring something back from the dead because we just have a gut feeling that it could be a good deck. But I think Shedinja is probably the one thing I'm going to chalk up to that I'm not going to play for sure. Especially because we are day 2, I think a majority of the players know how to play around it and will legally know how to stall the clock out. So I'll be tying a lot more games than I will be winning, even if I'm not losing. And for me in day 2, a tie, unless you're going from 4-2 to 4-2-1, a tie is equivalent to a loss in my books because it's just not worth it to play a deck that ties. And that's never been my playstyle, and it never will be. So it's not a deck I'll play.
Pedro.
I won't play any version of Malamar.
All right. Good. Awesome. All right. Shout outs, and we are out. Pedro, why don't you start?
Shout out to my team, Limitless. You can check the website, Limitless TCG, really useful for all Pokemon players. And check my Twitter, Sininchi, and my Twitch, Sininchi18. I will come back to streaming afterwards. We'll try to improve my content and stuff so people can enjoy and have fun watching some Pokemon TCG stuff. And
do you do streams in both English and Spanish, or are you uniquely English or uniquely Spanish?
Normally I stream like 80% in English, and if someone asks me something in the chat in Spanish, I answer in Spanish, but naturally I speak more English. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Rahul.
Shout out to you for having me on here. It feels good.
Ayo.
Shout out to Team ARG. We're pretty sick. We got a good group. Shout out to TC Evolutions. The dice is dope. You should get some of those before Worlds. Use my code Rahul10 to get 10% off.
Hey.
And then I guess shout out to Six Prizes. I read articles for there. I put out 2 articles recently, and I'm putting out a 3rd that should be dropping tomorrow, I think. I'm actually in the middle of writing it right now. And I don't want to cover too much of the already existing decks because I think a lot of writers have covered that. So my article is more on the decks that I think you need to be worried about, even though they're not good. But I think like you'll see them in day 1.
Right.
Like you can't just like be like Malamar's bad and not play against it.
Great.
And I think I put a lot of good tips and tricks in there to just know. And then my Twitch and Twitter are both the Flea with 4 E's. I'm streaming a lot more right now, mostly to hold myself accountable. And we're gonna do some sort of a fun stream when the boys get to my house on Monday.
All right. M.
Shout out to Top Cut Comics for sponsoring me. Use code TCC Team 10 at topcutcomics.com to get 10% off your full order. Use TC Evolution's dice. Don't buy official Pokemon dice at Worlds. You can follow me on Twitter at Roarchomp, ROARCHOMP, for general musings and memes on the Pokemon TCG. You can follow me on Instagram at Emery H. Taylor. And shout out to my parents for always making this possible, and to the Minnesota crew for always supporting me. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for coming on. Good luck to everybody at Worlds. Shout out to TC Evolutions for the great dice. And see you all on the other side. Ciao.